G'day everybody, Terry Ryder from Hotspotting. Hope you're all enjoying the holiday weekend. I've just been putting the finishing touches to the new summer 2018 edition of one of our most popular reports, which is called the Price Predictor Index, in which we chart sales patterns in every town and suburb in Australia to identify primarily the locations where sales activity is rising and where price growth is likely to be strong in the future. We also have a section in that report which we call the Dirty Dozen, which identifies the areas where, because sales are falling and for other factors like rising vacancies, these are places that we think that people should avoid buying. And our current chapter on the Dirty Dozen includes 8 primarily inner city apartment markets. These are markets where there are high vacancies, more construction coming out of the ground, and sales rates are falling off, which means values are likely to fall, and these are markets that people really should avoid. I also make reference to some of these markets in the latest edition of the Ryder Report, which is our monthly newsletter. The January edition is currently out there, which you can access on the hotspotting.com.au website. There's a section in every edition of the Ryder Report which is called Terry's Tips, and there's a couple of references there to apartment markets. One, I make the point that developers often exaggerate claims of off-the-plan apartment sales. They claim that there's been a sellout of apartments, or that 70% of units in the project have sold off in the first 2 weeks, those sorts of claims. And these are often reported as fact by a gullible media, when in fact they're not fact at all. There's some independent research that's been done quite recently that shows that there's quite a gap between developers' sales claims and actual confirmed sales. So as investors, we need to be very, very wary about what we read about apartment projects, particularly in the inner city markets of Brisbane, Perth and Melbourne. And the claims made by developers about the success of sales are often exaggerated. There's another reference in the Terry's Tips section of the January edition of the Ryder Report where I refer to what I call bus tours taking apartment investors on a road to nowhere, because we have this new phenomenon emerging in our property markets where marketers with an eye to an opportunity have set up tours for busloads of wannabe investors, taking them to projects where overseas investors have failed to settle the purchases of their apartments. This means developers have unsold units and which they're willing to sell at discount prices, and some of those investors on some of those bus tours may think that they're getting bargains, but often they're simply buying bad real estate. Investors need to consider why the units are being sold at discounted prices or bargain prices in the first place. Developers don't offer discounts because they're benevolent. It's because they can't sell the units any other way. And often we're talking about markets like the Brisbane inner city market. The Brisbane CBD vacancy rate right now is 9%. The inner city suburbs around the Brisbane CBD all have vacancy rates of 5, 6, 7%. And this is the climate in which these bus tours are taking place. So I refer to it in the Terry's Tips section of the Ryder Report as the biggest trap awaiting unsuspecting property investors. And it lies in these major inner city markets with the new phenomenon of bus tours for investors, and it adds an extra layer of danger to investing in these markets. Please be aware that tours taking you to these so-called bargain apartment buildings are the product of desperate developers trying to sell off apartments they can't sell any other way. So it's something to be very, very wary of. Many of those inner city apartment markets are already oversupplied, such as Brisbane and Perth, and others are heading down that path, such as Melbourne, probably inner city Sydney eventually as well. Certainly some of the Sydney suburban apartment markets, such as the Parramatta precinct and the Olympic Park precinct, already have high and rising vacancies, falling sales rates. Values are likely to fall there more so than any other part of the Sydney market as it comes off the boil. So those are some things to be wary of. Watch out for the new edition of the Price Predictor Index, which will be coming out next week. It's the new summer 2018 edition. And right now you can get the January edition of the Ryder Report to learn a little bit more about what I've just been talking about. That's all for now. Terry Ryder signing off. Talk to you again soon.